Welcome, welcome, welcome. Looking at my terrified expression, I'm confused with our new lesson and new NISE Night notes. The title is The Percent Proportion. I'm confused because we're working with percents. We just finished working with proportions. You're telling me that those two can go together? Ease your minds. It'll be no problem. They can go together, and we're going to figure it out. This is how we work through percent problems using proportions. And for our first piece of review here, you are just listening to this. What is 4% of 60? So our review question at this point is, what is 4% of 60? And when we get to this idea about 4% of 60, remembering these two things, we need to convert our percent to a decimal, and just remembering that decimals move 2 spaces to the left when going from percent to decimal, then multiply the number with more digits on top. So my decimal conversion, moving my decimal over 2 spots, I have to insert a 0 there. Therefore, my decimal is 0.04. My number is 60. Multiplying those, they both have 2 digits. I'm going to do the 60 on top. And now I can just carry out that multiplication just like normal. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 24. Drop down my placeholder, 0 and 0, to get a grand total of 240. But it's not 240. I need to figure out exactly where my decimal goes. I had 1 number, 2 numbers after the decimal point in my entire problem. Therefore, 1 number, 2 numbers after my decimal point in my answer. My final answer is 2.40, or just 2.4. But if we get that, that's 4% of 60. So just multiplying, moving decimals, and just finding where the decimal goes in the answer. And that is our review for where we're coming. Where we're going is we're going to start using these percent problems to use and solve in a proportion. I won't always be asking you for that what is a percent of some number. Sometimes I'll be asking you something different. So what's going to come here is we have to label our different parts. So again, you're going to jot this down. Labeling percent problems. Every single percent problem has 3 parts. Has a part, has a whole, has a percent. You won't know one of these. The other 2 you will know. So that's why we have to label those different parts. So first, we're going to label the parts what I have here. If we're looking for what is 4% of 60, really that's meaning that I'm taking this entire big number of 60, my whole number, and I'm trying to find 4% of that whole. What's left over is going to be just a part. So I'm trying to find the part of this entire whole. What part? Well, 4% of the part. So now I'm just labeling what the part is 4% of the whole 60. So now every single problem has a part, has a percent, has a whole. We can represent these with P, percent sign, and a W just to save some time, but that's how we're going to label our percent problems. So if you can just jot down this into your notes, what is 4% of 60, part, percent, whole, that would be fantastic. Now, here's a huge hint once we start shaking up these problems. The number following the word of is always the whole. Please make sure that you get this down into your notes, as you'll see our symbols up top. The number following of is always going to be the whole. So what is 4% of 60? We said that the 60 was my whole because it followed that word of. From there, now you just need to figure out what the part and what the percent is. The percent should have a percent sign or say the word percent, and then that part is going to be what's unknown in this problem. So labeling our problems to get us set up in the percent proportion coming later. Have to label. Let's just look at 2 more quick examples about labeling. Then once you have everything labeled, that's the hard part. Get yourself set up in proportion and then use your methods later. So let's label this one. Again, we're looking for a part, for a percent, and for a whole. What percent of $90 is 9? Remember we said that the whole always follows of, so we have our word of right here, meaning that 90 must be our whole. What percent of, made an extra line there that was unnecessary. That's okay, we'll leave it there. Let's just drag this word up. Obviously, this word percent is the unknown. We don't know the percent, but it's still the percent that we're looking for. So the unknown here is the percent, leaving the 9 to be the part. So if you could just jot down just the words there, what percent of 90 is 9, and then label those percent, whole, and part, if you could, please. Again, one more percent labeling problem. Again, all you need to write is 62% 62 is 90.5% of what number? Jot that down and then just get your labels underneath it. You don't need to label the title every single time, just this example problem. And so now again, we're going to use those same tools we used. We know that the whole comes after the word of, so we have the word of here. We don't have a number, so that's our unknown. So here in this case, my whole is my unknown number. And then we're going to put in 62 is 90.5%. Obviously, again, I did it again. And here we go, we're going to move that word percent up here because 90.5% is clearly a percent, leaving the 62 to be our part. And this is giving me some fits moving, so let's just draw an arrow right up there. 62 then is our part. Again, we labeled the part, the percent, and the whole. Find that word of, the number after is whole, then figure out the percent and the part from there. All right, so I labeled everything. What good does that have? Does that help me with? Well, here's our percent proportion, and this is the big thing I want you to take away. So I just need you to jot down these 4 things under the heading percent proportion. Once you have everything's labeled, now you just throw numbers into our proportion to help solve. We know that percent literally means out of 100. So that means we can take the number attached to the percent, write it over a fraction over 100, and we're halfway there. Now we just need our second ratio to help us solve in this proportion. So now we just look to that part over the whole. And that's a typical fraction way, where in every single fraction you write the part over the whole. And so now you're just taking those numbers that you labeled, putting in the proportion to help you solve. So here's the percent proportion. Part over whole equals percent over 100. Let's practice real quick. We have a problem labeled already. Again, if you could just jot down this example and then set up the proportion, that would be fantastic. You don't need to write down everything inside this line right here because you have it down already. This is just a reference for us as we're going through the video. So here we have my labels. What the unknown number is our part, 4% is our percent, and the whole is 60. So let's set it up on a percent proportion so we can solve. And our percent proportion tells us that I'm going to do part over whole. So part is my unknown number, because I'm seeing right here is my unknown number. Then the whole, what I recognized was 60, so I'm going to put that over 60. And that's going to equal my percentage, which is 4%, over 100, because that percentage sign literally means over 100, so 4 over 100. Now, I have it set up in my percent proportion, and now I can solve. Remember, when you have proportions set up, you can use all 3 of our methods. Fish method will work every single time. You have it set up correctly, fish method will get you the right answers. Sometimes it just takes a long time. Other quicker methods that we can use, inner rainbows and outer rainbows, those may not exist. They may not have a connection there, meaning you must use fish. But if you have outer rainbows, use them. If you have inner rainbows, use them. It takes a lot shorter of a time than using fish method. So now that I have that information again with the fish method, with the rainbows, now that I have it set up in my proportion, let's just solve using those methods. This one I like for an inner rainbow method. I could use fish and do 60 times 4 divided by 100 by connecting my fish this way in order to solve. But to me that's going to take a little too long because I also see a divided by 25 relationship. Ooh, that was a sloppy 25. But now I can just take 60 divided by 25 and figure that out. I'm just going to use my calculator to solve just for the sake of time. And we're going to have 60 divided by 25 equaling 2.4. So now I know that 2.4 out of 60 is exactly the same. Man, that's sloppy again. 2.4 out of 60 is the same thing as 4 over 100. We go back to the beginning of our video, look at that exact same example. That's what you got when you solve that problem using your own method. The only reason we're doing this percent proportion is when you start seeing some of those more difficult problems where you don't have just that straight multiply these 2 numbers together and you're there. So we need to be able to label, set up our proportions so we can solve. With that, we are to the end of our video, and here's your corny joke of the day. First, I just need you to know, did you hear about this sensitive burglar? He was getting caught all the time because he was always taking things personally. Sensitive burglar, taking things personally? Ha! Never heard of such a thing in my life. Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen, to me, and have a fantastic Monday night. Adios. Nye, over and out.